Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more discernment. Today we are going to be diving back into the Archaix Chronicon. We will be reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above and in the box down below so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. In addition to that, if you find value, I ask that you do all of the wonderful things down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment, whether or not you agree. Put it in the box, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. You guys have been remarkably respectful. I appreciate that. If you truly find value, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of any of my books. The first one, A Series of Unconventional Beliefs, is me detailing how I came to understand how to use the Holy Spirit to heal myself. It lays all of the rules and the groundwork for the simulation so that you can do the same thing because you are in control of your simulation. The second one, The Green Stone, is my work on spiritual alchemy, seizing control of your reality to create the one that you would like to see and doing it with scientific terms and a ancient understanding. I believe that that is the completion of Carl Jung's Mysterium Conjunctionis and his work with the archetypes. And the third one, which is probably the most relevant to today, is going to be A House Built Upon Shifting Sands, a biblical deconstruction of the Bible, using the Bible primarily as the source to completely discredit the Bible. It is the outflow of the Unconventional Bible Study. That is one of the playlists that will be linked in the corner. That is 161 videos of me reading through the Bible and discovering that there is not a whole lot to pull an understanding from in that particular work. It was a change in my understanding. That book, The House Built Upon Shifting Sands, is the synthesis of that Bible study. Nobody wants to go through 161 hours of me reading through the Bible, all of the begats, all of the boring stuff. We went through it in excruciating detail. We did word studies. We saw what it meant, what it has been interpreted as, and what it probably should have said. All of that. It is summarized in that book. These three books are available for purchase. The links are provided down below in or print format. I don't do Amazon myself. You are more than welcome to find it on Amazon. I use Barnes and Nobles as the primary print. In addition to being available for you to purchase if you wish to support the channel, these links also contain all three of these books in their entirety, with me reading them aloud and discussing the points as we go along, detailing how I came up with these ideas, how I expanded upon the ideas, and the things that are relevant. Now, we're going to take just a few minutes, housekeeping again. I spent the weekend in a good bit of contemplation, as I am prone to do. I like to think quite deeply on a lot of things. And I don't know that I have been completely clear about what I do over here with the influx of new people, right? There are people who are watching explicitly for the Archaix content. And it is natural to assume that I am here to attack Jason. I am not here to attack Jason. My point on this channel is to help as many people as I possibly can in a positive manner by empowering you to make the decisions in your life and to become the person that you were meant to be before you started making bad decisions. Right? We all make bad decisions. I am not excluded from that in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. But the purpose over here is to disseminate information, to go through and find what is good and what is not. It doesn't matter to me what the source is. It doesn't matter to me how long it has been written, how many copies of it there are, how firmly someone stands upon the assertions. What matters to me is internal consistency, truthful, honest endeavors to seek the truth, by not being intentionally deceitful. If you are honestly mistaken, that is completely different than being a shill, right? And so I am here to help my crew. I don't care if I reach 10 million subscribers or if everybody falls away except for one. It really doesn't matter to me on a mission-based level. Now, it is important, right? It is important to get in front of as many eyes as you possibly can. And so I set goals to get myself in front of eyes. I set goals for growth, but if I don't hit them, it does not devastate me, right? My existence is not dependent upon this channel. This is an endeavor. I am working towards something, and one day, possibly, it will be financially remunerable, but that is not the goal. It is not about the money, it's about the information. Something that cannot be said about me is that I am a shill. You cannot say that I am a shill because, number one, I do not have the financial remuneration, right? You cannot find anybody paying me. You can find YouTube paying me about $20 a month. I can show you the graphics, right? I have individuals who have made individual contributions to the channel, which has been significantly more than I have made from the entirety of YouTube. This is not about the money. It is not even about the influence directly. I do believe that we are in a simulation. I don't know that I have ever stated it as boldly and bluntly as that, right? I like to let you make your decisions about what we do, right? About the information that you take away from this, I am presenting to you the best information that I possibly can. But you can't say that I'm a shill. You cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, call me a Jewish apologist, a Christian nationalist or apologist, or anything along those lines. Because if you do those things, you haven't read through the book. You haven't watched me read through the book. Because I do not apologize for Judaism in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. I believe that they have been excessively overcompensated for their due, right? People attribute to this small, isolated group of individuals, and it is a small, small group, more power than they actually have. They are not alone in that. People do that all of the time. There are people here in this country today that believe that the white man is holding them down. That is exactly the same type of foolishness that you find in the Bible. The Bible, in its entirety, Old and New Testament, were fabricated. They were completely created to control populations, to control narratives. And it has been extremely, extremely effective. Effective would be the best word, right? It hasn't been beneficial. It hasn't been growing. It hasn't been any of those things. What I did was destroy that narrative, right? I went through the book. We read through the book and we dissected it in excruciating detail. And we discovered that the book of Genesis contains almost zero factual information. It is at best an amalgamation of oral histories, and as such, it can be taken as that. It can be taken as allegory for the spiritual ascension of man, kind of, if you throw away the rules. But it was entirely designed by someone, whoever that was, to create a religion, right? That is what the Old Testament did. It created Judaism. It laid out the groundwork and the framework through which these people can operate in the inside of the bounds of their society. And that may or may not have been a good thing. That is definitely up for debate. But it was a small subset of the planet. It is not borne out by historical evidence in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. Most, if not all, of the information that is contained is verifiably untrue if you dig at it. That was one of the outflows of that particular study. And I took on the study not expecting that. I took on the study thinking that I was going to have my mind changed because I have the capacity to have my mind changed. And I was looking for either confirmation or means to discredit. And I found means to discredit. I have done so with many works that people take as authoritative, right? We went through the works of Eliphas Levi and we discovered that he has no authority in the position that he placed himself at all. Nobody should listen to Eliphas Levi at all. The same is true for Aleister Crowley. Nobody should listen to anything that that man says about spiritual things at all. I mean, if you do, you have some fact-checking issues. We'll leave it that way, right? I read through it. We discussed it, and I feel like I have set a fairly firm groundwork of seeking the truth over here. Now, people can disagree about chronology, right? You can think that the world is 8,000 years old. I am fully free and able to think that it is significantly older than that. You can believe that humanity is only, what, 6,000 years old? I fully and firmly believe that it is longer than that. We can disagree about these things. I am trying to find the information. The problem that I'm having with the Chronicon, right? We're just over halfway done, right? There's 40 pages. We're on page 24 as of today. The problem so far up to now is we don't have physical records of most of these things, right? Most of the things that are recorded so far in the Chronicon, people wrote about them, right? That is where the sourcing was, that somebody wrote about these things, but not contemporaneously, right? Most of this information was taken from other people speculating about the things that they believe about the particular situation, and that may or may not be verifiably true. I have not seen substantive evidence in the Chronicon itself proving that any of this is true. Now, it may change. We may find something further along that supports that, but I want to hit on the simulation thing, right? I do believe that it was a simulation, right? I believe that God is running the simulation and that we don't even completely understand it. Um, we can, however, have some of the rules, right? I do have a list of rules. There are 8 laws of creation. They are fairly firm, right? I stand on them as my personals. I stand on them as almost universal truths, right? To the point that they have to be individually verified outside of myself by others before I can stand on that fully and firmly. But the outflow of my understanding is I have performed miracles. Now, these aren't big, flashy, call down balls of fire from heaven or make the lame to walk, except it kind of is, right? I haven't called down no balls of fire from heaven. I'm not attempting that. But I have caused the lame to walk. Was he fully lame? No. But was he partially that way? Yes. Who am I talking about? Me. Right? When I began this channel, I could not walk. Right now, I could walk, but I couldn't walk effectively. My left leg kind of did its own thing. It was a severe limp, a whole lot of pain. It's like walking on glass for every single step. But through the procedures that I outline in a series of unconventional beliefs, I took control of my own destiny. I grabbed hold of my timeline and I have changed things. Right? I can run. Whereas I couldn't walk, now I can run. Before I couldn't throw a ball, now I can. Before I couldn't do a push up, now I can do pull ups. Right? It is a whole different phase of existence, a whole different reality. And it was through the intentional creation of it that I achieved this. And I healed myself from the not being able to walk to being able to walk. I did the same thing with talking, right? I couldn't talk for about a year and a half, 2 years solid. And then I got a little bit back and I started doing the vocal therapy that is in part this channel. And not so much anymore, but it was at one point. And I started looking for truth, right? And we began in a very odd place. Right? Well, we began with the MBTI, right? And I completely revamped that system. It is not the same system that used to be. It is something different. And it is not recognized by anybody but me, but that is fine. I'm perfectly willing to put it out there. It is entirely my creation. AI didn't have anything to do with it. And so I wrote that book explaining how I healed myself in 3 ways, right? The first one was my throat. I had a subcutaneous cyst that pressed upon my vocal cords and stretched them to the point, right? First off, I couldn't speak because the cyst was holding against my vocal cords. And then I got rid of the cyst through the things that I talk about. And it's taken some time to repair the vocal cords to where I can talk in the way that I'm doing right now. But that is, without a doubt, miracle, right? Even to the point that it was called prior to. I told my wife, much to her consternation, that when the time was right, that the cyst would disappear, and it did. I healed my back. We just talked about that. I used to have extreme difficulty walking, right? It took me, the story was, it took me 45 minutes to do my first mile. Turns out I was wrong, right? It was only two-thirds of a mile. It took me 45 minutes to do two-thirds of a mile. And I used Google Maps to get my distance, and I missed it by a third. When I started using GPS to track it, turns out I was severely off, right? It was two-thirds of a mile, 45 minutes. Now I do 5 miles in 54 minutes when I'm walking. I do 2 miles in 24 minutes when I'm running, which is pretty much every other day as long as the weather is permitting. I went from walking with a cane to training for a 5K. These are things that are existent in my life. That is, my back was 13 problems, right? 7 bulges, 6 herniations, 3 spinal impingements, scoliosis, stenosis, degenerative disc disorder, and most of that is no longer a problem for me, right? It is something that I am still a little bit working on, but for the most part, not an issue. In addition, the third way was my arm, right? I used to not be able to do this. You may not know that, but I used to not be able to move my arm like that. I only had about 80%. I had a surgery back in 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. And so for almost 2 decades, I wasn't able to use my shoulder effectively. I can. That is the outflow from that book. In addition to that, in April of, well, last year now, my neighbor broke my leg. I used the same procedures to speed run a broken leg, right? I wasn't supposed to be really walking good until 6 months in, and by 4 months, I was running. I mean, these are things that have happened, verifiably, provably true, right? All of those things are real. I have taken control of my timeline, and I say it in that particular way because the one thing that will set me against you, right? Well, there's two things that will set me firmly and fully in opposition to you. The first one is willfully disseminating the wrong information, right? Not being genuinely wrong, but knowing that you are wrong and still disseminating, right? That is my problem with Candace Owens, right? Candace Owens is a liar completely and totally. She has no veracity whatsoever. She has completely shit the bed in the entirety of believability. She will never say anything that I will not take to fact checking because she has proven herself to be verifiably untrue in a multitude of ways. And that really pisses me off. To lie to people with intentionality, that is a big, big deal for me. The other thing that will set me against you fairly firmly is nihilism. There's one thing that I absolutely cannot take nowadays since, these books have come out, and that is somebody telling you that you don't have the power, that somebody else has that power, and you might as well just let them deal with it and only really focus on you. And that's the problem. I have a video. It is called The NPCs and the Multiverse, and I highly recommend that you check it out because I explain what I am about to explain in some extensive detail. We live in a simulation, right? But it doesn't involve a dome over the flat earth. That is not a thing, right? What it involves is that God has decided to create the creation, and so he did. And he did so for the experience that you will get, and so you get experiences. Now, your life is completely filled up with divergence points. Now, what does that mean? A divergence point is a point of decision that you make, and you make thousands of them every single day. You make a decision when you get up, what clothes you're going to put on. You decide, do I go to the bathroom before or after I put those clothes on? You get to decide, do I eat breakfast? What do I eat for breakfast? What route do I take for work? Do I leave early? Am I running late? All of those are decisions that you make. Every single one of those decisions is part of the simulation, but every other decision is equally a part of the simulation. And the difference is that you are the decider for your timeline, not my timeline, not anybody else's timeline. Other people can be aligned with you, But this is your timeline. I This is my timeline. I am in control of mine. You are in control of yours. And while it is not entirely your responsibility to fix the world, it is, however, your responsibility to fix your little piece of it. It is your responsibility to set your intentionality. It is your responsibility to enforce the discipline. It is your responsibility to ensure that your path doesn't deviate from what you know is the highest timeline that you can achieve. And nobody actually does that, right? And by nobody, I don't mean absolutely nobody. I mean almost nobody. Most people operate under a system where somebody else is responsible. Somebody else is holding you back. Somebody else is making decisions that are affecting your life. And while that is true, you get to make decisions too, right? And especially here, right? In the United States of America, with this unique vision of freedom that we've been experimenting with for only 250 years, right? This is unique on the planet. The method by which we live is new. It is not something that has been done. It has not ever been expressed in the way that we are doing it. You get to make decisions, and every one of those decisions, they affect your timeline. If you make the decision between eggs and bacon, right? Or sausage and bacon, that's a better one. That decision can have a profound effect upon your life, or it can mean absolutely nothing. But you making the decision, let's say it's for sausage, right? You make the decision, I'm going to have sausage. Well, if you would have had bacon, you might have choked on it. And that is a whole alternative reality that plays out. And in somebody's timeline, that happened. In somebody else's timeline, you passed away because you made the decision to have bacon instead of sausage. Now that's an arbitrary decision, but those decisions they unfold in that manner in a myriad of ways. But you are always on your best timeline or the one that you choose, which should be your best, right? God is always trying to simulate you into your best. You just have the ability to make the wrong choices. There are always the path laid out, and most decisions are not, well, most decisions are exactly as arbitrary as sausage or bacon. Some of them are significantly more, right? You deciding to stand for your beliefs is a decision that changes your entire course of reality. And you making the decision that, regardless of the consequences that may fall out, taking the steps that will lead to those consequences, right? Believing you are making the right steps. And by doing so, you create a reality which is quantum entanglement, the observer phenomenon. Those things are real. You get to create your life. But if you give that power away by saying somebody else is in charge of it, then you've gave it away. You are no longer in control of your own timeline. You gave it to someone else. And if you are running around screaming, the Jews, right? You are giving that power to them. They do not have it. It is not a thing that is intrinsic to them to have the power to take over your timeline. That is not a thing that they can do. And that is a fundamental misunderstanding that we correct on this channel quite a lot. And I don't know that I've done it yet for the Archaix, his crew, right? There are people who will watch me and be like, oh, this guy's talking about something that I understand, and they will join the crew. There are people who will watch it and say, this guy is full of shit, and they will wander off. Doesn't really matter to me, right? I want the crew, I want the fullness of the crew, because the more people operating on the higher levels, the better we can direct the timelines. The more people that you have focused in the right direction, the less there are in the wrong, the more the bottlenecks become a little bit unnecessary. Now, there are bottlenecks, right? You are here for an experience. Some of that experience is wonderful, some of it is terrible. Most of the terrible ones, they're going to wind up being bottlenecks. Bottlenecks means that it is an unavoidable place, right? You get to make all these decisions, but at some point there is a narrowing of the decisions into this one significant change event in your life, and then there's a myriad on the other side of that. Well, that narrowing is the bottleneck. World War II was a bottleneck. It was a worldwide catastrophe of misunderstanding and misapplication and not doing the right thing. But there were individual pockets of people taking the correct action on their timeline to enact a better route. Not everybody participated in that, but because enough people participated in that, we were able to shape the direction outside of the bottleneck into a new direction. The more people that are aligned together, the better off you are. And I'm gonna start wrapping this up so we can do at least a little bit of the Chronicon today. But an intrinsic part of this is the NPC theory, right? There are Consider that life is a game, right? An MMO, massive multiplayer online game. World of Warcraft's a good one because I played that one for too damn long. But most of the time that you are in an MMO, you are actually operating alone. You can group up with other people, but for the most part, you are self determining. You, as the player character, are making the decisions in the greater world, even though it is a simulation, and you get to do all of these things. But there are quests, right? There are some quests that you can do by yourself, and then there are some quests that you absolutely have to have somebody else to help you with. It is near impossible, if not absolutely impossible, to do these things without assistance. And so you collaborate. And for this dungeon, we'll say it's a dungeon, you get together with 5, 10, 20 people, and you come together and collaborate and decide we are going to attack this objective. And so, for that limited scope, you are all on the exact same timeline. Every single one of you is fighting this way. You are going for that enemy, right? We are going through all the rest of them to get there, but you're headed towards that one. And as soon as you defeat that one, you get another series of decisions. Those decisions are stay in the group and do another dungeon or go off on your own, right? And then at that point, it goes from a cooperative effort. If you choose to go off on your own, it goes from a cooperative effort back to a solo effort. You're still in the same world. It's the same simulation, but your goals and their goals no longer align. So you go in different directions. All of those people who are no longer, right, you were goal oriented together. And then you're not. Well, at that point, when you break the group apart and you go in this direction, you are still a player character. But all the rest of those people who were just cooperating with you are now non player characters in your existence. They're still in the world. They're still doing quests. They're still chasing their dreams, right? But they are no longer aligned with yours. You are the only PC in your world now. Every single one of them is now completely irrelevant to your progress until you realign yourself with them. What I am attempting to do is align as many people towards truth as possible. Now, if that truth points to 8,000 years, I will be on board with that. But as of yet, that has not happened. There has been no, oh, well, you're right. If that happens, I will correct. But up until that point, right, I have to maintain truth, veracity, understanding. And I have to do it with the understanding that I already have because I have performed miracles. I have healed myself. Like I've done things external. They're a little bit harder to prove, right? The whole situation with Candace Owens, the day I decided to throw her on the list was the day that she really lost her relevance. The day that I decided to deal with Dylan Mulvaney was this day that he lost his relevance. The day that I decided to deal with Little Nas X. And by deal with, I want this to be fully and firmly understood. I pray for people. Now, some people have a problem with the word pray. I do not attach it to the Jewish understanding. It is setting intentionality, and that's the phraseology that I'm comfortable with. You can use any other word for pray that you would like to. But I set intentions every single day. When I tell you that I pray for you every single day, part of my intentions that I pray is for you, for your highest timeline, for your benefit, for peace, love, forgiveness, abundance, and prosperity and freedom, right? That is the 5 things that I pray into your life every single day. Doesn't matter who you are. Everybody on the planet gets the exact same thing. But some people get a little bit extra. I pray for several of the crew members by name: Chris, Shannon, Runar, Adam, Jason. Y'all get it. Y'all are in this every day. I am here calling you by name every single day, setting the highest intentionality for you. There are people that I don't know, right? I pray for who Ding the Totally, Problematic, Jelly Roll, Mad Child, Burden, Up Church. Like, I got a whole list of people that I go through every single day. And yes, I did say Up Church. If you've been around for a while, you may not know that I don't deal with that. Now I was there, I don't anymore. It is a whole thing, and we can talk about that if people are interested. There is a video where Pitt shoots his own foot. I have a track record of not chasing the algorithm, probably much to my detriment. I could probably be a whole lot more well known if that was the goal, right? I could have went down the Ryan of Church rabbit hole and got a whole fan base because I have that capacity. I can do that. That is not my goal. I dealt with Ryan the same way I deal with other people. I put him on the prayer list, and it has been effective. Some of the people that are on the list you would be surprised about, right? Little Nas X, Dylan Mulvaney, Candace Owens. I don't pray that they have a downfall. I don't pray for the detriment at all. I pray for truth, justice, freedom, understanding, all of the good things, right? Bring them better understanding. And if it is the same understanding, bring me to that understanding. Bring me correctability. If I need correction, I am here for that. I have been corrected several times. Losing my voice was me being corrected. I was dealing with politics. That was not my direction. And so I got corrected through the cyst. That's when I was told, whenever the time is right, you'll get rid of it. And I did. I mean, all of that is, you are in charge of where you are going. You get to decide for your life the direction. And you should not allow anyone to tell you that you are not in control. You are. Now, it may not seem that way because there are things that appear to be out of your control, but everything works together. Right? If you are working for the betterment of humanity, if you are working for God's will, then it will work out. Period. The end. It doesn't matter any of the interference that comes along. There are things out there that I don't agree with. That is an absolute truth, right? I don't believe in child sacrifice. I think that that is a horrible abomination, but we still got a bottleneck to work through with that. And so it still occurs. We still kill more people than cancer and heart disease kill every single year by choice for convenience, right? Upon an altar of sacrifice. That is still a thing that we do. I don't agree with that in the slightest bit. I think that that is a horrible practice, but that part is not under my particular purvey. It is still part of my timeline. It is a bottleneck, right? It is something that has to be worked through. We're not there yet. There will be a time where we will be dealing with the consequences of that particular action. It may even be today. You get to make decisions, right? But you are here operating under rules. Those rules are that existence is, that there is space, that we are hurtling through it, that there are external influences out there in it. Now, whether that is extraterrestrial life or just gaseous emanations, that's up for debate. Many of the things that I have seen so far can absolutely be explained simply by space. By most of what we've seen so far has been speculation, right? Genesis, entirely speculation. Book of Enoch, entirely speculation. Book of Exodus, entirely speculation. Jasher, so far, speculative to the nth degree. No veracity, right? These are problems. That is what we are exploring. We are looking for the understandings that lie underneath, and it doesn't matter. But you are in charge of your timeline. You get to make decisions for yourself. And sometimes those decisions are the right decision that leads to what appears to be the wrong path. It is better to die for a true belief than it is to live for a false one. It is better to seek the highest understanding that you can possibly extract from a situation than it is to simply accept something that is not quite right. You have the capacity to make decisions within the bottlenecks, Some things are outside of your control, and the only thing that you can do is make that stand. And that stand is vitally important, right? If everyone around you is saying, kill that kid, and then it is up to you to stand in opposition to that, whether or not anybody changes their mind, whether or not that costs you your entire life. If you know that you are standing on the right side of it, then it is better to die than it is to live with the falsehood. Every single time you do get to make decisions, right? Those decisions are vitally important, and some of them are beyond you, right? We don't really get a decision on who runs this particular country. We have the illusion of control, but there is a certain degree of control that is absolutely explicit in that illusion, right? The illusion is the simulation, it is the game, but you still get to make decisions. You still get to align yourself in the correct ways. And whether or not you believe that this is the correct way or that is the correct way is not really what I do over here. I am firm in my beliefs. I am less firm in pushing those, right? It may not seem that way if you just come into some of these reads, but I am very much, you get to decide about your timeline. Right? If you are not aligned with my timeline, that's fine. Your timeline can go to destruction. It has no bearing upon mine. Mine is growing, mine is getting better. The entirety of the world, even though it doesn't appear to be, is getting better. Sometimes there is a sickness. Sometimes the sickness has to run its course, and sometimes you get to put an early end to a sickness. All of that is to say, right? I am never going to be okay with a nihilist. I am never going to be cooperative with you don't get to make decisions. We will never see me say that this particular people is holding you back from anything. There are nefarious actors. That is a true statement. The one mother father rule is real, right? It doesn't take the entirety of an organization to be corrupt. It just takes one mother father. One person making the decisions can ruin an entire organization, can completely misalign it and point it in the wrong direction. And sometimes that is intentional. The decisions that you make on an individual level bear more weight in your life than you could possibly realize. Every single decision that you make is a decision for your future, whether it is good for you or not. If you decide, I'm going to eat 15 Snicker bars, that has a bearing on your future, right? You're going to put on some weight. It is empty calories. There is nothing really that you're going to be able to do, right? You're going to supersede any exercise efforts that you could have for that entire day by doing so. But you get to freely make that choice. You can choose the wrong thing. Nobody else can make you eat those Snicker bars. Nobody else can make you choose to align yourself in opposition to what you believe. Nobody can, and nobody has the right to try. And that is my major point, right? I give you information. I try so very hard. I may fail, but I do try to point out that it is your decision about the information that I relay. You are free to follow Eliphas Levi if you wish. You are free to check out Aleister Crowley if you wish. I just recommend against it because I have done the work and I know that they are valueless, like completely and totally valueless. And that is not something that I often say. I don't believe that this particular work is that, right? Or else I would say that. Another thing that has to be understood is I know how to do this system. Right? I could have very well ignored the Ryan Upchurch situation and followed him, right? A lot of reactors went that route. I am on personal contact level with a couple of them, right? We don't associate because of that stance. Right? But I could have. That's where the algorithm lies. That's where really gaming the system as opposed to using the system really works. Right? I could have chased either side of that argument, right? I could have sucked things and done things to ingratiate myself to this person, and I've got enough charisma that they would have accepted that, right? Or I could stand on what is true and real and verifiable and understandable and correct, right? And those words all have different meanings. And that's what I did, right? Instead of chasing the algorithm that was Ryan Upchurch, I stepped away from it. And I didn't even do it in a negative fashion. I stated my case, the video stands, and then I backed away completely, right? That is how I operate. If you are not in alignment, if you are disseminating bad information intentionally, then I'm just going to deal with it and move on. Right? If you are genuinely misunderstanding, or if I am, those things are correctable. Right? Intentionally choosing to deceive is another thing. Intentionally choosing to keep people held back by telling them that they don't have a decision is pretty close to evil. It really is, especially if you have influence over their minds, over their thoughts, their considerations in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. If you have the capacity to disseminate information and you do so without verifying or considering, that is a problem for me. Exactly the same problem as telling somebody that they cannot change their life. You can in a variety of ways. A variety of ways. I have recovered from addiction. I don't fight addiction. That fight is gone. I still smoke weed. You can call that an addiction. Do what you want. I don't care. I gave up all of the good stuff, right? I don't do any of the hard stuff anymore. I gave it up straight off clean, cold turkey through decisions that I made. But I have made bad decisions before in my life. It is about correcting those decisions. You get to change, right? I'm no longer an addict. I no longer deal with depression. I no longer fight anxiety. I no longer fight the health issues that I did. I am in a different reality. What I am doing is exposing that reality to as many people as I possibly can. And sometimes that goes by exploring things that are going to bring attention. The Chronicon, the whole reason that I did this wasn't to disprove it. That is the outflow. It was to explore the ideas, right? To see if there is veracity, to see if it is provable, if it is traceable, if it is trackable, if you can. Now, I fully understand that this stuff is sourced, right? I just disagree with the sources. I fully and firmly, emphatically disagree with anything based upon a knowledge of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, or Deuteronomy at a minimum. I am fully and firmly in disagreement with anything that is based upon Enoch as a reliable source. It is not. I am against anything based upon Jasher as a reliable source. It is not. Jasher, we are still exploring, but it is apparent already. I think we're on chapter 5 or 6. It is apparent already that that book has no veracity. If you are using that as a source for anything, whatever you are using it as a source for is incorrect, right? Now, allegorically, fine. As speculation, no problem. Veracity, as provable, traceable, trackable, problem. Now, I have already talked for a lot longer about this than I wanted to, right? But it is something that has to be pointed out because there is a misunderstanding about me, right? I am not here to chase an algorithm. I am, right? I am not here to chase the algorithm in the previously conceived ways, right? If I was here simply to chase a crew, right? Simply to chase the group, what I would have done was take the information that was in the Bible and fed it back to you. Maybe sprinkle a little sugar on the top so it's easy to go down because it is a whole load of shit. But I could have very well aligned myself with that deception. I can lie, I choose not to. And so I could very well be one of those people thumping the Bible and pointing at you and telling you you're burning in hell. Hell doesn't exist. That's a big deal. Redemptive sacrifice never was a thing. That is a big deal. And to align myself in opposition with probably a half to two-thirds of the world's population, right? That's kind of a big deal. If you completely dismiss Abraham, well, that throws you in direct opposition to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Straight off the top, I don't comport with any of those. All three of those particular belief systems, incorrect, based upon fallacious information. I am in direct opposition, directly placing my life on the line. I mean, I know that. I don't care. It is better to stand on the truth. But I could have chased that algorithm. I could have taken this and run with it as written with no questions, and I would have got a lot of people, right? If I was out here sucking things, bumping my head on the desk, so to speak, then I could have a good chunk of Jason's audience. I don't want it. I mean, not that I don't want people to come to my channel to seek true information, but if you are buying it hook, line, and sinker, that's not who I'm here for. I am here to expose truth wherever I can. If it proves that this is true, then fine, it is true. But if it is not, then fine, it is not. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to try to get at least part of this done today. Another thing, right? I addressed this in the last video, but it's been a couple of days. I'm going to go ahead and hit it again. I am never going to invite myself onto someone else's show. I'm going to put it as plainly as that. I will not go seeking links in the chat. I will not be emailing a request to come on your show. It doesn't matter if it's Jason. It doesn't matter if it's Myth Vision. It doesn't matter if it's Tim Pool. It doesn't matter who it is. I am not going to request myself to come on your show. It's simply never going to happen. I will do what I am doing. I will investigate. And if somebody is interested and they want to invite me for a discussion, we can have a civil discussion, right? I am not opposed to that. That is not what my intention was, right? I could very well have attached myself to the other side of the argument. I do have those links on my channel, but I am not arguing from their viewpoint. Right? The people who are in opposition to Jason, who Jason is in opposition to, that's a better phrasing, they bear no relevance here. Right? They did the Graham Hancock, the Randall Carlson, those things. Like, I don't agree with Jimmy Corsetti. I don't agree with Ben Carson. I don't fully agree with Randall Carlson or Graham Hancock. They are bringing some interesting ideas out, and therefore I give the references so that you can explore those ideas. I did the same things with the Thunderbolts Project. I did the same thing with Tom McDonald, right? Explore the ideas, see what you think about them. I am not sinking my line on either side. I am fighting for the truth. And if the truth leads in this direction, it leads in this direction. If it leads in that one, it leads in that one. And that is all that is important to me. If I go on Jason's show, which several of you have requested me to do, it will not be because I went searching it out. Hopefully, that's clear, right? I am not in opposition. I am not here even in opposition to Jason as a person in any way, although he does have some nihilistic tendencies. 2839 BC, 1056 Annus Mundi, 4944 before Armageddon, 600 before the flood, 2400 Anunnaki chronology, 1470 Phoenix chronology, 1200 orbital chronology, 832 Jewish calendar, 600 descent of the watchers, 534 in the Olmec calendar, and 264 in the Vedic. This year marks the 66th year of pyramid construction, or 792 months. Exactly 70 years earlier, the Anunnaki dynasty began with a matriarch, ruling over the Canaanite kingdoms in 2909 BC. But in this year, the empire of the Nephilim expands to include the Sethites. This is the 264th year of the Vedic calendar, the Kali Yuga, that began with a wicked goddess. 264 years being 66 times 4, again providing us 792 times 4 months. The sum of 792 is the calendrical signature of the Anunnaki and Nephilim. Priorly, in 3439 BC, exactly 600 years earlier, the Anunnaki Watchers traded knowledges for the daughters of men, but now they take human females by force from their fathers and husbands. Oh, I did receive a small explanation about this thing, right? Trading for knowledges. Now, that is highly dependent upon them being mobile in a way that is probable. It is entirely possible that if these people did exist, they had the capacity to move in a way that we don't, right? Or didn't. But it is highly reliant upon what's the best way to put it, right? On a susceptibility, right? Like if this tribe over here sells their daughters for knowledge, right? That knowledge is done. That knowledge is going to get out. There is no holding back knowledge on a grand scale. It doesn't happen. Once there is a bow and arrow used against these people, even if those people don't have one, they will develop one once they have been exposed to it. Once you have been exposed to fire, you will find out how to make fire. If you have been exposed to food preservation, you will learn how to do that. If you've seen people applying rouge, you will learn how to do that. You will come to that because you have seen it and you can innovate. That is the human spirit, that is the human nature. But this is not entirely impossible, right? It is possible that the Anunnaki had ships, even if they were conventional ships in the way that we see them now, right? Sailing vessels. That is a possibility. It doesn't have to be super fantastical. And they went around the coast trading knowledge for daughters. That is reliant upon a lot of things, right? That is a reliant first and foremost upon the non-valuing of daughters. Well, there's some reason to believe that that was a thing in history, but not for every culture, right? To try to pin human innovation onto interspecies intervention, right? We couldn't have developed fire on our own because obviously it had to come from these space creatures, as opposed to somebody saw a tree on fire and preserved it for a while and then figured out, hey, look, this stuff burns a little bit better than that stuff does. And maybe we can start a fire. Maybe we can figure something out. This is getting hot. That resembles a fire. I wonder if I did this a little bit more vigorously, if it would create a fire. Talking about friction, of course. Flint and steel absolutely is a thing, right? You absolutely have that. Flint and iron has the same effect. And so if you happen to be napping flint and you picked up a stone that had a high iron content, guess what's about to happen? You're about to throw some sparks. Not as much as if it was steel, but you're going to throw sparks. And that may cause a fire. That is an entire possibility. If there is enough grass around, striking the fire, trying to create a flint head, you got fire. The discovery of fire doesn't rely upon somebody bringing it to us. The same with every single technology along the way. It is possible that there was some intervention, right? There was a surprising growth forward. Now, in order to talk about that, we're going to have to talk about something else. I don't believe in evolution. That's a big statement. I do believe in evolution, right? Microevolution. On a species level, we do evolve. That's why we have computers and lights. We have evolved from the people who used to just have sticks and stones. We have done so through innovation. But I don't believe in macroevolution. I don't believe that suddenly, randomly, chimps or great apes lost their hair and became a new species simply through interbreeding. What I believe is that there was a catalyst to that event, that there was something on a global scale that affected a lot of things at the same time, forcing a change in genetic material. Now, me personally, I believe that that was magnetics, right? Electromagnetic radiation of some variation, either from the sun, which is the most likely, or from an external source, which is a little bit less likely, but still possible. And what happened was this emanation happened, and much like Chernobyl, we get random spontaneous mutations within the species. That would be simultaneous event, right? The sun explodes at the exact same time for everybody on the planet, and it affects a chromosome change in a great ape, which now their children, all of them, are born without hair. Well, now we have a genetic imposition, right? We have a genetic prerogative for why we don't have hair. It does not make evolutionary sense for humanity, to lose its hair, to have to develop clothing. Doesn't make any sense. Hair is a wonderful insulator. And if you can't survive with the hair that you got, you would move yourself, right? We see that in the animal kingdom. It is both heat and cold. The argument that people were too hot for hair doesn't work. Look at the Congo. How many naked things are running around the Congo with no hair, right? Mostly just reptiles. Well, humans are not reptiles. There is no biological imperative for transitioning from hairy creatures into non hairy creatures other than an external force. And that external force could be the Anunnaki coming and fiddling with the DNA of the entire planet, or it could be a solar explosion affecting the entire planet at the same time. I find or feel that my explanation is a little bit simpler than these people came down. That also explains the capacity to further humanity, right? If there is another event, as if there was a cycle, even where we got the ability to go from stone tools to bronze, the capacity to understand food preservation and fire through the exact same process that gave us no hair, right? The capacity to meld the size of our brains together for better decision making things. All of that makes more sense in my model than it does in this. That explains blood types. That explains positive and negative blood types. That explains a wide variety of things that other people try to explain through less likely scenarios. And this is dependent upon humans can't innovate. And while it is not entirely impossible that the Watchers traded knowledges for the daughters of men, it's a lot less likely than that humans simultaneously created through better understanding. We're already in an hour. They also practiced hybridization between species of animals and plants. That's supposed to be animals. Um, the oldest stories of and again, the exact same theory can explain that, right? Genetic mutations would definitely result in some at least pseudo hybridization, right? Things that don't appear to be, right? Maybe it did make a single horn grow out of the head of a horse. Maybe that is a thing. Maybe they disappeared because they weren't able to genetically reproduce. Maybe there weren't enough of them, right? But it is entirely possible through the exact same process of solar eruption or extrasolar invader that this happened, right? We have evidence of that. Chernobyl, there is genetic variation within the wolves around Chernobyl. There has been a study done. It is significant. You should definitely check it out. It lends entirely into my theory, so confirmation bias, but it does explain this without supernatural intervention of some entity from space or from the depths of the planet or under the ocean or whatever the current alien hypothesis is. The oldest stories of the Chinese concern the Dragon Kings who founded the first Chinese dynasty. They descended from heaven and had flying machines. And that is possible, right? I do not rule that out entirely, but it is highly unlikely. The founder of this dynasty was called the son of the Red Dragon. These Dragon Kings were the firstborn sons of heaven and earth, which in ancient Sumer, these words, heaven and earth, were Ain and Ki. And these dragon kinds were thus Anunnaki. The same story is told in archaic records in India, and these machines that flew people around were named the Yamas. There is a cycle. I haven't read through the Vedas yet. I keep wanting to. We haven't got around to it, but This is something that is existent in the Vedas, right? We do know that they have stories of fantastical flying machines, great destructive weapons, and things that are fairly contemporaneous to today. There are alternative theories, right? There is cataclysmic events. My current favorite is sudden sudden plate tectonics, right? Is the best way to explain it. Instead of needing the plates or the world to rotate 94 degrees, which is still a possibility, one of the main reasons that I believe that is because of it was a woolly mammoth in the Antarctic or the Arctic. That is possible outside of the 90-degree shift in one way that I've been able to discern. Now, suppose, for an instance, that there was this thing called subsistence, right? And what subsistence is the slow, gradual lowering of the plates due to the static pressure built upon it. And so, if there is the best way to envision it, right? If you were to take a piece of styrofoam and like make a square of styrofoam and put it in water, right? It'll float. It floats on top of that water. But if you put a little bit of pressure on one side of it, one side goes down and the other side goes up a little bit. And if you go far enough, you can put part of it underwater and part of it not. Now, if that instead of a flat plane had cavities, right, and you moved the side down, the water went into the cavity, it would cause the entire thing to sink just a little bit. The more water that you put in there, the more likely it is to go completely under the water. Now, styrofoam is exceedingly hard to completely submerge, and that's why I use that particular example. But the same thing is true for the plates that rest upon the mantle. They move. They are large discs, kind of. They are rounded, but they are there, and different pressures create different things. The ring of fire is one example of that. The mid-Atlantic ridge is another example. But there are places where they speculate that the mantle is exposed completely, and that is probably due to the subsistence. Now, if there was a cataclysmic addition of weight, that could cause catastrophic subsistence. And what that is going to result in, right, I really don't want to use a comet because there is so much opposition to the comet, but if there was a mud flood, for instance, came from outer space, right, that is not compensated for by plate tectonics, and it hit, and instead of causing a great crater, it just sits, right? It just falls and it completely covers whatever it falls upon. That is added weight upon the plate that is not compensated for, and it's going to cause, at very minimum, some problems, right? Now, if it hits in exactly the right spot and it causes that to go underneath the water and it catches some water, well, that's going to cause the entire plate to go down. And as it goes down, it's going to expand, right? As this comes down, there's going to be solid pieces that are not connected to the subsistence. And the subsistence is going to go down sort of like this. And it's going to push pressure out in these ways. And that makes things move. That's where we get mountains from, right? It is entirely possible that there was such an event, whether that was a comet or a meteor or whatever, mud flood, however it happened to happen, and it hit and it caused a massive subsidence, say in the Atlantic Ocean, and it caused an entire civilization to fall down. It would push other things in different directions. As this is going down, it's pushing things away. It would create mountain ranges, and part of that can explain, right? If there was at that point this woolly mammoth eating this food, and it was suddenly, right, the subsistence happens, the entire plate breaks loose, and it pushes the elephant that way. Well, then now it is suddenly submerged into Arctic temperatures where it wasn't before. Now, that is not a fully fleshed idea. I have not done the mathematics to see how likely it is, but it is at least another understanding that can explain the same phenomenon, because as it stands, there is no real good explanation for that woolly mammoth. Not even necessarily that it's there, but that there is undigested food contained within it. Even after you die, you digest. And in order for that particular thing to stop, it had to have been a near instantaneous freeze. That can be explained by that, right? The movement. It can be explained by plasma streams. Like plasma streams can cause cold or hot events depending upon the activation level of the plasma. And so it is possible that some of the fires that are unexplained are explained by plasma discharge, not a comet. Right? And that is one of my major contentions with Randall Carlson. It doesn't have to be a comet. Even plasma can affect, right? We have here in Louisiana, we have a site of plasma discharge on the planet, fairly well confirmed. And so these things are possible. Let me go ahead and try and get this wrapped up so I can get to the live stream. But this begins the 600-year reign of terror of the Nephilim over mankind, which starts 600 years after their fathers appeared in 3439 BC as the Anunnaki. The Nephilim were angel-human hybrids, gigantic of stature and highly intelligent. This is 2400, 600 times 4, of the Anunnaki chronology, and 1200, 600 times 2, since Earth began orbiting the sun. The famous hero Noah was born in the first year of the oppression before the flood, 2839, on the vernal equinox, anciently the first day of the year. That actually makes better sense than the one we have. Right? The vernal equinox is spring, right? That is when things begin to grow and new life begins. I will point out that there is no reason to believe that Noah existed. He is named Menachem, Comforter, and he is the fulfillment of a prophecy preserved by the Sethites concerning a man who would be born and save the world. As a type of savior, Noah was born in the year 1056 Annus Mundi, 10,056 years after man was banished from Eden in 3859 BC. There is no reason to believe that Noah existed, but there is no reason to believe that there was a singular survivor of flood, right? There was no global flood, but there were significant regional floods somewhat concurrently. Right? Several places flooded at the same time. Again, that is explained in a couple of different ways. The 90-degree shift, that is a possibility. The tectonics that I just discussed is another possibility for these floods being a thing. Whether or not it is true, completely up for debate. But Noah, no. Noah is fairly well not. And if that is confusing to you, I have 2 playlists and a book that will explain it. The sum of 1056 is the geometrical value. There's that gematria again. It's interesting that you use it if you don't value it, though, right? Of the joy of thy salvation in Hebrew, as found in Psalm 51:12. The Greek 1056 is the value for the heavenly man, as found in 1 Corinthians. In a passage in Isaiah concerning the Great Pyramid, I read through Isaiah. I did not find any pyramid. Isaiah 19:19-20, the statement in Hebrew, he shall send them a savior and a great one. As the geometrical value of 1056, this Isaiah passage will be explained in 2815 BC. Okay, so without going back to Isaiah, I can't fully talk about that one, but I can say that almost every single instance of a prophecy from Isaiah has been misconstrued by Christianity. In 1895 AD, the historian J.D. Parsons wrote that Noah's birth was at the meeting point of 2 of those famous cycles of 600 years, so often referred to by ancient writers. This refers to the great year, a 600-year period called by the Sumerians a Ner. Long ago, it was taught that a divine man would arise every 600 years. Thus far, the tradition is held true with the descent of the waters in 3439, a type of divine man, and the birth of Noah 600 years afterwards. Well, the watchers were not men, right? Even from this text, but even especially from the source text, the watchers were not men, and therefore a divine man would not be a watcher. Words are important. We will see that King David also fits within this timeline as well as others. There is only one outside of biblical reference to David at all, and it was not King David, it was the house of David, and it was almost certainly a generation or three after David didn't exist. And again, if that is confusing that there is no David, I suggest you fall back and check out my book, right? Or watch me read it to you. There is a relevant chapter on David. It is titled correctly. And one on Solomon too, who also did not exist. As Noah was born in the first year of the oppression of the Sethites by the Nephilim, the pattern bears out later when Moses is born in the first year of the oppression of the Israelites by Egyptians. The first year of the oppression, you say, not when Joseph sold them into slavery, not when he instituted the first socialist government. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the oppression began when Moses was born. Well, first off, there is no reason to believe that Moses existed either. Incidentally, pre-flood Sethite civilization was centered where Egypt was geographically. The Nephilim kings and overlords initiate new laws and policies. Ancient records attest that after Noah was born, the world quickly fell into wickedness and experienced a great population explosion. Humanity turned wholly away from God and flourished in crime, incest, and corruption, filling the earth with violence. Hedonism became widespread among the Sethites now, and the practice of divorce became the norm. Marrying wives and giving them up. Abortion became an accepted practice. To kill an embryo in the womb was taught by the Watchers. Both divorce and abortion were Anunnaki population control methods employed against the Sethites, forcing humans to violate their principal command from God to be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. Those holding to the elder faith became an extreme minority. The Nephilim matriarch would only rule over the united empire of the Canaanites and Sethites for 10 years before her sons assumed the kingship in 2829 BC. The famous 7 kings of Sumer. Footnotes. 1. Jasher 4:18. 2. Odyssey of the Gods, page 30. 3. Jasher 4:13. 4. Jasher 4:13-14. 5. Stones and Scarlet Thread. 6. Our Sun God, Christianity before Christ, 33. 7. The Christ Conspiracy, 338. 8. Jasher 4:16-17. 9. Luke 17:26-27. And 10. Enoch 68:17-18. We have read through most of Luke, all of Enoch, at least what is purported to be the first one, and we are currently working through the book of Jasher in a live format, which is going to be taking place in about 36 minutes, which is why I've got to go ahead and wrap this one up. Now, what we are discovering in that live stream is that there is not a whole lot of reason to believe that there is any true information contained in Jasher at all. But that is going to bring us to the end of this particular exploration, and I know it was a little bit unconventional, right? I hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I fully understand that I hold unconventional beliefs, and I do have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional. It's not something that I apologize for. I know that this is not my normal way, right? Normally we just deal with this, but there are reasons. One of the main ones is that people keep recommending that I go on Jason's show. And as I stated, I am not going to invite myself. I don't care if the link is available in the chat. I don't care. I am willing to have a discussion, but it will not be me seeking attention. That's not what I'm doing. Right? I could chase the algorithm in that way. I could be calling Jason out and trying to suck up to the other side. I could be calling the other side out and trying to suck up to Jason. I don't want to do either one. Right? If I go on Jason's show, that's fine. If I go talk to Graham Hancock or Randall Carlson, that's fine as well. I don't agree with Jimmy Corsetti. Right? I probably won't wind up on Corsetti's show for a variety of reasons. The same with Billy Carson, right? I completely and emphatically disagree with almost everything that Billy Carson says, and there is no chance of us having a civil discussion. It's just not going to happen. He is one of those intentional liars, and I do not tolerate that. If this study bears out that it is true, right, we are going to check out most of these sources. If it is available, we will check it out in the same way that we are doing Jasher, the same way that we did the Bible already, the same way that we have gone through several, right? This is not a unique study. I am not doing this. I wanted to deal more with contemporaneous understandings, right? This was a very good way to get into a variety of discussions. This isn't just about one particular part, right? We get to talk about mud floods and simulation theory. We get to talk about space. We get to talk about formation of the world. We get to talk about a lot of things due to this particular work. And that is why I wanted to use it. I mean, it's got nothing to do with personal enmity whatsoever. It has nothing to do with anything that could be attributed with negative intentions. If there is truth, we will find it. If there is not, we will expose it. And that is just how it's going to work. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, or follow. Throw me a comment, whether you agree or disagree. Put it in the box, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing, do all the wonderful things, like, share, follow, buy a copy of my book, give me a super thanks, check it out. Reach out to me through the links provided down below. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you were here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.